Hello and welcome everyone to today's Association for Manufacturing Excellence webinar titled Building a People-Centric Culture. I'm Jerry Strohmeyer, the Education and Training Program Coordinator for AME, and I will be your moderator. Our presenters are Lisa Weiss and Maria-Elena Stouffer. They are members of and presenting today on behalf of the AME People-Centric Leadership Team. They are also certified professors for the Communication Skills Training in the Barry-Wehmiller University. Lisa Weiss is the Lean Program Director for the Delaware Manufacturing Extension Partnership. She is a Lean continuous improvement expert with over 18 years of success in helping hundreds of organizations achieve their vision and meet their goals by engaging people, implementing enterprise excellence, and inspiring innovation. Maria-Elena Stouffer is the President of Ultimate Lean Incorporated, a former chair of AME, and is currently the AME Key Result Area Lead for People-Centric Leadership. She has also led a team of individuals whose agency was at the lowest ranking for morale and is now at the top for morale 2 years in a row. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping items. You will be in listen-only mode throughout the webinar. You will see that you are muted on your attendee panel on the right side of your screen. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them into your question area in the attendee panel and click on Submit. We'll review the questions at the end of today's presentation and answer as many as we can. When you log off today, please check your email inbox, and it will be an invitation and link to fill out a short webinar attendee survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey today, as your feedback is very important to us to improve future webinars. Our presenters have also graciously agreed to provide a PDF of today's presentation. We will be sending that along with a recorded link for a webinar replay to each of you next week. Now I am pleased to introduce Lisa Weiss and Maria-Elena Stouffer, who will present Building a People-Centric Culture. Take it away, Lisa.
Thank you, Jerry. This presentation is a result of the work of the AME PCL team, and it is a pleasure for Maria and I to be sharing this material. During this webinar, Maria and I are going to provide an overview of people-centric leadership and creating a people-centric culture. We're going to begin and talk about the crisis of leadership, followed by the AME vision and the linkage between people-centric leadership and continuous improvement. Then we will walk through the elements of people-centric leadership and a people-centric culture, and wrap up with how to get more information on the topic and answer any questions. So, the question is, why do we need people-centric leaders and a people-centric culture? According to the most recent Gallup polls, 7 out of 10 employees are disengaged or actively disengaged. That means only 30% of the population is actually engaged at work. Even scarier is that 20% of the population is actively disengaged, potentially exhibiting behaviors that are harmful to the company. This lack of engagement results in an estimated $450 to $550 billion annually in lost productivity. So, according to the Gallup polls, engaged teams significantly outperform disengaged teams with lower turnover, lower accidents, lower quality defects, lower healthcare costs, and lower absenteeism. They have higher productivity, profitability, and customer satisfaction scores. Because they are engaged, these teams also come up with the most innovative ideas. They have the most entrepreneurial energy and create most of the company's new customers. So, the reality is that 87% of C-suite executives recognize that disengaged employees are the #1 threat to their business, and that to win customers and a greater share of the marketplace, companies must first win the hearts and minds of their employees. The crisis that exists is not that leaders are not aware of the problem. The crisis is, how do we create engaged teams? So, before we can improve employee engagement, we need to understand what we mean by employee engagement. Employee engagement is a property of the relationship between an organization and its employees. A highly engaged employee is someone who is emotionally connected to the mission and purpose of their work, while a disengaged employee is indifferent toward their jobs, or worse, outright hate their supervisor or organization. The key to all of this is that the level of employee engagement is a result of the relationship between an employee and the organization. So, if employee engagement is the result of the mutual commitment between the company and the employee, then if companies want highly engaged employees, the question is, what is the equivalent commitment from the company? So if you look at the chart on your screen, the left-hand side of this chart shows the company commitment, while the right hand reflects the equivalent employee commitment. So if we look at the left-hand column, the company commitment transformer progresses from we provide a good-paying job with benefits to we care about the health and well-being of each individual, and their growth and their success is critically important to the organization. And similarly, on the left-hand side, if the company commitment is that they provide a good-paying job with benefits, then the employee's commitment will be simply, hey, I show up to work on time and do what they tell me to do, and no more. However, if the company commitment is centered around caring for the health, well-being, and growth of the individual, then the equivalent commitment will come from the employee. The employee will be emotionally connected to the mission and purpose of their work. They will be highly engaged. So the point is, you will not get highly engaged employees if your commitment is about providing a good-paying job with benefits. So what can we do? Well, first of all, you can't make people engaged. You can't make people care. You can't change people. You can't motivate other people. You can only provide an environment that will inspire people. And I really love this quote because I think it kind of sums it up perfectly. The truth of the matter in business is that you don't do anything by yourself. You create an atmosphere in which people want to do their best. You don't order anybody to do their best. You couldn't order Beethoven to compose the Ninth Symphony. He's got to want to do it. And so the head of business is an enabler rather than a doer.
So I'm going to talk about AME's response. So thanks, Lisa. How has AME responded to the crisis? In our vision statement, A Manufacturing Renaissance, we recognize that in order for a renaissance to occur, enterprise excellence simply is not enough. So most of you have gotten fairly good at enterprise excellence and the lean tools, but as Bob Chapman puts it, continuous improvement is the Ferrari, and as great as a Ferrari is, it needs energy to fuel the engine. Well, this energy is people-centric leadership coupled with enterprise excellence, and that's what fuels engagement. So, how have we defined people-centric leadership? People-centric leadership is a culture where every day everyone goes home fulfilled by pursuing excellence and where everybody flourishes. So the body of knowledge throughout this presentation is from extensive research by the People-Centric Leadership team that Lisa described and developed through various People-Centric Leadership summits with over several dozen CEOs and presidents from various companies that you see listed here. These leaders are who helped us shape our work. Now, on the respect for people side, just like on the continuous improvement side, you can indeed tour what the leadership and culture looks and feels like inside, just as you can tour what a good pull system, for example, looks like inside a company. Again, back to the AME's vision, we state a coupling of people-centric leadership with enterprise excellence. So it's not continuous improvement or people-centric leadership, it's both. Again, most companies on the journey are getting really good at using the tools for business results, but they're sorely missing the respect for people side. And that's really where the profound culture change occurs, which actually fuels those business results that Lisa just discussed. So, like the House of Lean, with 5S and value stream mapping and tact flow pull, etc., we've developed a house of people-centric leadership. And like the House of Lean, the People-Centric Leadership House starts with learning to see. And learning to see what? It's seeing the vision of what you would like the culture to look and feel like.
So, Through strategy alignment, strategy deployment, Hosch and Connery, companies have defined their visions. These visions tend to focus on the aspired impact of the product or service which the company provides. Few visions are created on the people or culture we want to achieve. Great visions encompass both. When we talk about visioning in the context of people-centric leadership and creating a people-centric culture, we're speaking about creating a vision for the culture that we want to create, about the positive impact we want to have on the lives of our stakeholders. And it begins with defining our values. This vision then drives behavior in the organization and stands as a reminder of how we should treat others. This helps provide guidance in problem solving and decision making and will help propel the organization towards greatness. It is then the role of a leader to live out these values and support and guide others to do the same.
So Lisa talked about the stairs, if you will, about visioning. Not only a vision for the business, but a vision for the culture that we want to live and behave and engage in. So most companies that embrace lean have some sort of a Hoshin plan or a policy deployment. And the key here is deployment. So like the days of strategic plans that sat on the shelf, sometimes Hoshin plans do as well. The key here is engagement, so that everyone in the organization knows the vision and is given the ability to see how their work actually contributes and makes a difference. So let's look at that. In order to get that engagement, we start with the arrow of priorities. So taking those priorities and putting them into a plan, and not just any old plan, but one that's inspiring. That plan then needs to be easily and effectively communicated, keywords easily and effectively, so people get engaged and can visibly see, and then they'll want to continue that cycle. Sounds easy. However, some typical barriers are team members don't know the goals, or they don't keep score, or they don't know what to do to achieve those goals, and sometimes they're not held accountable. So you might be saying, well, gosh, you're talking about people-centric leadership and you're talking about accountability. Seems like you can't hold people accountable in a people-centric culture, but aha, you do. The thing that's different is you coach and mentor them to get back on track. So let's recap some of this. Team members need to see simply and visually that the work they do matters. So first you need to set some SMART goals, and we're not going to get into exactly what SMART goals are. I'm sure people have heard of SMART goals. What's important is in a people-centric culture, the letter M in SMART is for meaningful. So team members want to know why the goal is important. Next, the goal needs to be highly visible. So team members should be able to immediately tell if they're winning or if they're off track. And when they're winning, you should celebrate. And when things are off track, coach to help get back on track. So it's not a, oh my gosh, better dead than red, let's hide. But the leader needs to ask, hey, we're off track. What can we do to get back on track? So the next thing that's required is reflective listening. Lisa and I both teach communication skills training, which is going to be renamed Listen Like a Leader. What's interesting is if you ask anyone, they'll tell you they're good at listening. The truth is, of all the skills and behaviors, this is probably the most difficult. Something you'll hear a thread throughout the presentation is this is all about allowing people to be challenged and to solve their own problems. That's what makes work enriching and fulfilling, but the problem is it's really hard to solve your own problems if the leader doesn't know how to listen.
So perhaps one of the most important skills, and yes, yet most overlooked skills in all of life, is the ability to listen. And this skill is pivotal not only in creating a people-centric culture, but in implementing lean and continuous improvement tools to achieve enterprise excellence. The unfortunate thing is that most people believe that listening is an innate skill, when in fact it is not. Hearing is innate. We can all hear. Listening is not. It must be taught. For many of us, we think that listening is simply being silent and waiting for the other person to stop talking so we can talk, not actually absorbing anything that the other person says. When we listen, we give people our full attention. We shut down the inner workings of our mind and hear what the other person is saying by putting ourselves in their shoes. By listening, we're able to see ourselves as they see us. We do not judge, give advice, or offer our opinions. The reality is, listening is the most helpful thing a person can do. When we listen, we allow people to reflect. When we listen, we allow people to solve their own problems. So the next building block that we want to talk about is celebration and recognition. So creating a culture of celebration and recognition that goes much deeper than pizza parties and gift cards is critically important in a people-centric culture. We need to recognize people for their contributions and acting and behaving in accordance with the organizational values. It is not just what they do, it's how they do it that we need to recognize. People need to feel that they are valued by the organization and the team members that they work with. Studies have shown that people feel stressed not by the magnitude of work that they have, but when there is an imbalance between the effort they give and the reward that they feel. Recognize people frequently and often. Interestingly enough, the person who gains the most from expressing gratitude or recognition is not the person being appreciated or recognized, but the person doing the appreciation. Celebrate success, both small and large. This sends the message that what we are doing has meaning and purpose, and it helps to build teamwork in the organization. All right, most people believe that by providing tangible rewards, you will enhance performance and drive desired behaviors. Counter to this, decades of scientific studies have shown that tangible rewards tend to have a substantially negative effect on intrinsic motivation. Rewards demotivate, not motivate.
So the next building block is trust. Trust is comprised of two pieces, implicitly trusting and building trust. So, what does it mean as a leader to implicitly trust your team? We demonstrate that we implicitly trust others by giving them control over the work they do and the environment in which they work. Yet the problem is we can't say we implicitly trust and then we lock up tools and supplies. We can't say, I implicitly trust you and have you checked and verified for everything you do. So when we do this, your behavior isn't aligned with your actions. I'm sure you can think of many policies in your organization that show that you don't trust people. And what's unfortunate is you'll see in the next piece of trust is that implicitly trusting is actually the cornerstone for building trust. So implicitly trusting means decision-making gets pushed down to the closest and the information, down to the closest to the information, and again, allowing people to solve their own problems. So it's that giving people the voice and authority to exercise their natural talent that they already have. And so why should we implicitly trust employees or teammates? First, a feeling of having control is really central to being engaged. And the second thing, there's been many scientific studies, Lisa just talked about this, about stress in work environment. Well, what you find is stress in the work environment have shown that it's not the demands of the job that are causing that stress, it's really the degree of being controlled versus being given autonomy. And what's unfortunate, as you'll see in the next piece of trust, is this. Implicitly trusting, again, is the cornerstone for building trust. So the next facet, or the other side of the coin in trust, So if implicitly trusting means I trust you, building trust is I am trustworthy. And there's 4 components to building trust. They are reliability, openness, acceptance, and congruence. We're going to take these one at a time. What do you mean by reliability? Reliability means you're dependable and deliver on commitments. It's doing what I say I'm going to do. Openness is about being truly transparent with nothing to hide and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, as well as open to what others have to say. So it's really that being the real you. And acceptance is a shift away from being me-oriented to being others-oriented and accepting and honoring that there's differences. And then lastly, this is a lot about this whole presentation, is this congruence with the values. So congruence is about walking the talk and aligning your behaviors, your words, your actions, again, with the values. Now, we'll get to building relationships in GEMBA Walk. If you think about it, trust is paramount in the ability to build relationships and engage with the whole person, as you would imagine. The next building block is humility. You soon see, and you're probably already seeing it, is that these pieces and blocks are just incredibly difficult to simply pull apart, and they're tightly intertwined. For example, in order to trust, you need to be humble. Now, one of the CEOs that helped us build a body of knowledge, Gordy Bannister, discussed with us something that at first seemed a bit counterintuitive. And what he said is, in order to be humble, you need confidence in your values. Now, that's not to say confidence means arrogant, but be confident. He went on to describe that if you're insecure, it's also pretty difficult to be humble. Just like building trust, humility requires believing that everyone has unique ideas, and like implicitly trusting, it's intentionally giving away decision-making. Needless to say, humility is also about admitting mistakes, and certainly thinking that you have all the answers is going to breed, certainly can't breed developing people. So, as you can see, as we build these blocks, they're so critical to true engagement and to developing an enriching, continuous improvement, problem-solving culture.
So the next building block is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is a critical component of being a great leader. And some people believe it's actually more important than technical skill or IQ. It is essential in reflective listening, coaching and mentoring, being an inspirational leader, going to GEMBA, establishing trust, and most importantly, building relationships. Emotional intelligence is all about how well we handle ourselves in our relationships. There's all kinds of information available out there on emotional intelligence and not much consensus. So what do we mean by emotional intelligence? So what we've done is we've adopted the model by Daniel Goleman. And we can break emotional intelligence down into 4 major components. And the first is self-awareness. It's knowing what we are feeling and why we're feeling it. Being self-aware drives intuition and provides us with our moral compass. The next element is self-management. It's about handling our distressing emotions in an effective way so they don't cripple us, but also tuning into them so we can learn from them. It also involves marshaling our positive emotions to use them effectively, aligning our actions with passions. The third element is social awareness or empathy, and that's the ability to know what others are feeling, tuning in to other people and their feelings. And then the fourth kind of brings the first 3 together into relationship management, and it's all about putting together skilled relationships. So if emotional intelligence is so critical, the question always is, well, how do we improve it, or can we improve it? Well, first, you really can't measure emotional intelligence like you can IQ, although there are many claims out there of tests that do. Structured programs have been developed to improve emotional intelligence, but probably the best way to improve emotional intelligence is by simply paying more attention. So, the next building block is inspiration. Becoming an inspirational leader is a journey of discovering your own inner purpose and passion and inspiring others to find theirs. An inspirational leader is also perpetually optimistic. Inspirational leaders are driven by purpose. It's the why and how behind what they're trying to achieve. It digs deep into our values and what is important to us. Inspirational leaders can clearly articulate their personal purpose statement, and once they understand their own, they help others find theirs. Passion is the fire within us. Passion drives success. An inspirational leader must first find the passion within themselves and then ignite passion in others. Everyone is watching the leader, like the conductor in an orchestra. The conductor does not make the musicians play. The conductor makes the musicians play with passion. And last, there's optimism. And optimism is a perspective and a choice. It is being able to see and believe in amazing possibilities, both in people and in achieving goals. This is important because believing in others makes others believe in themselves. Simply put, great leaders have hope. So next we want to talk about growth and development. When we think of growth and development, we tend to think of structured training programs or events, but in reality it's happening all the time, almost imperceptibly. It is this growth and development that is most critical to engagement. Over half a century of scientific research across the globe, from all walks of life, from metal workers to brain surgeons to ballerinas, has shown that the essence of engagement is growth, when our highest strengths are deployed to meet new and higher challenges. So, if you look at the graph over to the right-hand side of the chart, as we are presented challenges of increasing skill, our engagement increases to a point at which it maxes out and then decreases. So if the challenge is relatively low, we are bored, we're disengaged. If it is too high, we experience anxiety and we're disengaged. But when the appropriate challenge forces us to a new level of mastery or expertise, it is at this point that we experience our highest point of engagement. If you ask an individual to describe times in their work environment that they felt really engaged, they'll describe times in which they were assigned to a project or team which forced them to stretch their abilities, that forced them to use their skills, to think, to grow. These types of challenges are present in the workplace everywhere, and pursuing enterprise excellence provides infinite opportunities to challenge. So, in a people-centric culture, individuals drive their own path for growth and development. Leaders cultivate, encourage, and nurture by defining goals and target conditions, by defining business needs and skill deficits in the organization, making employees aware, by providing skill-appropriate challenges, which means leaders need to understand the skill set and level of their employees, by providing variety and opportunities for people to discover their passions and talents, by supporting training through time and resources, by coaching and mentoring, and by providing structure for employees to develop and track individual growth. So, if you want to grow your company, grow your people.
Thanks, Lisa. The next building block is acceptance and inclusion. So we talked a lot about trust and humility, and certainly there's elements of inclusion in both of those. But going deeper into the meaning of acceptance and inclusion is allowing team members to contribute as their authentic selves and feeling that sense of connectedness. So think about the opposite when it occurs, is a team that's really homogeneous. What do? You get this pylon of ideas with little to no innovation and creativity. In fact, there's a major company, and one of their core values is inclusion. And they made a statement: when diversity and inclusion scores are strong and employees feel valued, the result is better customer service and better business results.
All right, so the next building block is building relationships. So contrary to conventional management practices, in a people-centric culture, the leader needs to build personal connections with each and every employee. The reality is the whole person comes to work. People are not actually schizophrenic, in which there exists a totally discrete work person. What affects the whole person affects the work person. Getting to know the whole person provides the leader with the opportunity to understand what makes each person tick, what each person's values and passions are. It provides the leader with the insight to give their employees' jobs real purpose. It is also critically important to build relationships between employees. Teams that like each other, work well with each other, know each other's passions and talents, and have each other's backs will outperform unconnected teams, even with all the best continuous improvement tools in place.
So the last one, but not least, is a piece of standard leader standard work, going to GEMBA. So we talked a lot about humility, trust, building relationships, emotional intelligence, and leader standard work is certainly much bigger than just going to GEMBA, but the reason we're focusing on going to GEMBA is because it embodies all these elements that we just discussed, but it's very much overlooked. So again, like the lean tools, we got pretty darn good at the mechanics, or again, the tools, and made it systematic and robotic. The truly human part of it is, when going to GEMBA, or going to where the work or action is the go see, ask why, and show respect. And we're going to peel that back a little bit. So the go see is seeing if the purpose is aligned, seeing if people are engaged to achieve that purpose, and are they supported. And the ask questions is about looking for symptoms and not prescribing solutions. And that's where humility plays a big role. So it's confirming what we're trying to achieve and then asking, why can't we? That's where trust is critical and developing people really happens. And last, show respect is about engaging hearts and minds. You want to respect, you want to rely on, you want to develop, and you want to challenge team members. And that obviously requires keen, reflective listening. So again, it's not about teaching leader standard work items, but rather the behaviors and motives of the leader. It's more of a coach than, well, here's the technical items and the boxes you need to check. Did you go to GEMBA today? This is really about the role of the leader and how you go and how you show up, who you really are. That's so misunderstood. So again, more folks are beginning to say the words coaching and mentoring and developing people, but it's really difficult to do without humility and trust. It's not just about the work, but caring for that whole person. Another one of our leaders, Tom Hance from Lincoln Industries, who's actually 7 years running at Best Places to Work, talks about the 24/7 person, not the 8-hour, 40-hour-a-week person. And he actually gets to know every single person in the organization. So it's really a cultural checklist of values when you go to GEMBA. Did I go with the motive to develop and mentor? Am I caring for the whole individual? Did I encourage and support problem solving? Did I celebrate and recognize? Did I listen? And one thing that I would like to actually de-emphasize, which sounds a little hypocritical, is that perhaps we overemphasize that, yes, it's about being humble, and it certainly is, but also relinquishing control and truly empowering and forcing teams to solve their own problems is what it's about. But with that said, there's also the role of leader is to remove those systematic, high-level political issues, technical barriers, and resource barriers. So, just a fun quote from Dwight D. Eisenhower: farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the cornfield. So, recapping the human side of GEMBA walks, check your motive. Are you hunting for wrong? Are you looking for who versus why? Do you show humility and enable people to truly grow and develop? Do you show you care? Do you help the team connect and see how their contributions really matter and give positive reinforcement, recognition, and do you support course correction?
All right, thanks, Maria. Next, we want to talk about reflection and self-assessment. So the leader must live the values of the organization. Everyone in the organization is watching the leader. All eyes are on the leader. And if the leader is not living the values, the employees never will. So reflection and self-assessment are essential. And this involves a continuous process of evaluating values, goals, and objectives, and how congruently our behaviors and others' perceptions of our behaviors match these values, goals, and objectives. The key is to be able to see an accurate picture as others see you, then to be able to self-adjust. The question is, who do we intend to be? Not what do we want to accomplish, but who do we intend to be?
Okay, a little bit of humility. This is the last one. Community and environmental stewards. So, community and environmental stewards, you'll find that more and more organizations are evolving where planet is the most important business partner, where they have deep respect for the environment. Their core values are to do community outreach and to make a social impact. There's another company, Cascade Engineering, who does a ton of social outreach, and they were also one of our contributors.
So, the roof of our house of people-centric leadership is flourishing. And when we put all these building blocks together, businesses flourish, people flourish, communities flourish. So we've walked through all these blocks, right, and how to build, or basic building blocks of a people-centric culture. And it began with defining our values and creating a culture vision of the organization. A leader's job is to help people change their way of thinking and behave to enable them to get there, to consistently connect what they do to organizational values. It is more than just knowing the values. It is about living the values, splicing them into our DNA. So there are a number of resources available to help you achieve a people-centric culture available at the AME website. This is a collection from the AME PCL leaders and the AME PCL team. I'd like to call your attention that in addition to this information, we have an animated video of some of the PCL, People-Centric Leader CEOs, speaking about the people-centric culture. It's really a must-see. I also wanted to bring your attention that the AME is offering the Barry Way Miller Listen Like a Leader course, which we're still calling it Communication Skills, on March 8th through 10th in Newark, Delaware. And the People-Centric Leadership team will be presenting a Fundamentals of People-Centric Leadership course at the AME conference in Dallas this year. In addition, the AME National Conference offers a plethora of opportunities to learn about people-centric leadership. So, on behalf of the entire AME PCL team, Maria and I would like to thank you for your time for this webinar. Do we have any questions?
Great. Thank you, Lisa and Maria Elena. And now we will review any questions. And if you do have any questions, please submit them on the right side of your screen. Here's one. Which performance management model is commensurate to the strategy?
So this is Marie-Elaine. I'll take that one. So I can't tell you exactly which one is commensurate, but I can tell you that a performance management system needs to first clearly communicate priorities as far as which is the best. An effective performance management system needs to start with what we talked about, goal setting process, followed by regular feedback and reviews and appraisals. It also should identify employees' developmental needs and include robust, what we talked about, reward and recognition practices. The system also needs to encourage collaboration, teamwork, and communication. So as long as they have all those elements, they'd be commensurate. And there's another great article on this from, once again, our friends at Gallup. And it's titled, What Your Performance Management System Needs Most. And we can post that on our website as well. Similarly, there's experts that speak on the subject that all come up with, again, these common elements that I just talked about. There's some fabulous TED Talks on the subject on performance management systems that, again, have all of these elements. And we'll put those up on our People-Centric Leadership website as well. There's Dan Ariely, who talks about performance management systems, and he describes the system that challenges and recognizes. Drew Sudley describes a performance management system that involves each other's day-to-day experience. So again, very aligned and similar to what we just talked about. Thanks.
Great, thanks. The next one is, what if someone breaks your trust?
Ooh, very tough. So if trust is broken, like anything else, a true people-centric leader tries to understand the motivation and the root cause of that broken trust. And what we'd like to see is the leader working to coach and mentor that behavior that's misaligned. We keep talking about this alignment with behaviors. So there's a misalignment with the standard that was defined in the vision or the expectation of that behavior. So again, there's this standard behavior and there's a deviation away from the standard of what we expect. So just like an abnormality on the business side or the business metrics, we work to coach back to standard. And if the leader determines that the action simply, and you have to be really patient, simply can't be coached, and the person who, again, Lisa described this, is the only person that can change, the only person that can choose to change is not taking the opportunity to change, then there's some difficult decisions. Lisa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think you did a really great job there. But basically, when you implicitly trust someone, you're believing that their internal core values are aligned with yours and they will act and behave in accordance with those values. So as you said, if they behave in a manner that appears not aligned with your core values, you need to understand the motivation behind their behavior. But ultimately, if you discover that their core values, what they fundamentally believe, are not aligned with yours, then you need to decide if parting of ways is in the best interest for both of you.
Okay, great. Thanks. The next one is the hidden message that you must work with every person and reach the level of fulfillment you desire, no matter how long it takes?
All right. First of all, you can't control other people, so you will never get the level of fulfillment that you desire. The level of fulfillment will be what they desire. But I think one of the questions that you're asking, and one that I have actually struggled with and had many discussions with colleagues about, is, so does this mean that in a people-centric culture, you just let people walk all over you, not performing as the job needs, acting in conflict with your core values, and you just tolerate it and try and coach and mentor them back? And no, that's really not what we're talking about. And someone described it to me this way, and it really kind of resonated. So suppose you have an employee, and they're not performing the way you expect them. And suppose you're Burger King, right? and your employee keeps making Big Macs because they want to make them, but you need Whoppers because you're Burger King. The reality is making Big Macs is not a bad thing. The world needs Big Macs. They're just in the wrong place. So sometimes an employee is not aligned or bought in to your mission and purpose. They're doing something else. You need to confront this reality, and in a people-centric culture, you need to help them move on and maybe find McDonald's, so to speak. You need to come to a mutual understanding. The key is identifying misalignment to core values or purpose, and then coming to a mutual agreement that this is not a good match and helping people move on.
Okay, great. Can you please expand upon the difference between celebrating and rewarding? And can you also please provide examples?
Okay, so when we celebrate, we get together to acknowledge an important event or occurrence. And usually this includes fun, food, drinks, and opportunities to share the importance of what happened. A celebration could be getting the organization together after an improvement event and allowing the team to present results and talk one-on-one with the rest of the organization. And hopefully you do this in a fun way. One group who participated in the communication skills training that Maria and I facilitated was so inspired by what they learned that they put together a fun and informative video to share with the leadership and the rest of the organization. That's a form of celebration. A celebration could be getting the team together to go out to dinner or go bowling to celebrate the award of a big contract or a successful quarter or the conclusion of a big, a successful project. When we're talking about rewards and the negative impact of rewards, what we're talking about is tangible reward. And by this we mean a reward that you give to somebody when, if you do this, you will get this. So examples of rewards would include, if you come up with an innovative idea for a new product, you will get $2,500. If you participate in an improvement event, you will get a Target gift card. If you meet this goal, you will get this pile of money, and if you meet this bigger goal, you'll get this bigger pile of money. And those are examples of rewards when we're talking about rewards that we should not use in the workplace.
Okay, great. Thanks. You mentioned a study that showed that rewards demotivate. Could you explain more about how and why they demotivate?
All right. In 1999, a psychologist, Edward Deci, and two of his colleagues reanalyzed nearly 3 decades of studies on the negative impact of rewards on heuristic tasks, or tasks that require some type of cognitive skills, no matter how small. And he concluded that after careful consideration of reward effects reported in 128 experiments led to the conclusion that tangible rewards tend to have a substantially negative effect on intrinsic motivation. And probably the best summary of this is in Dan Pink's book, Drive: The Amazing Truth About What Motivates Us. Dan Pink also has a number of online videos on this topic. Psychologists and psychiatrists say that rewards are a means to control or manipulate, and people do not respond to being controlled or manipulated. When we give people a reward for something that they are doing, that they are intrinsically motivated to do, it diminishes the significance of what they are doing. The internal feeling of greatness is replaced or attempted to be replaced with a less valuable external reward. So I struggle with it, I honestly do, and it's really perplexed me for a long time, as I'm sure it does all of us. So.
Okay, great, thanks. Please describe some successful celebration and recognition programs and ideas. So successful celebration and recognition programs make people feel valued. The key is not that the company or organization recognizes the value or expresses it. It's all about the individual actually feeling valued. Most people can see the value of their team members, right? We all know that, hey,
Maria's a great team member, and I know that, I tell her that, but unfortunately, we rarely communicate this to them very effectively. And most organizations depend on structured programs. However, the greatest impact comes from daily, informal, personal contact. So creating a culture that team members regularly and often recognizes and appreciates each other through verbal affirmation is a great start. So the Barry Miller Company has a great culture for this. They teach associates how to express recognition effectively. They open all meetings with an opportunity to have team members recognize each other, and same with large group meetings. So that's a great example of great celebration and recognition. Another approach is using the techniques defined in the 5 languages of appreciation by Gary Chapman and Paul White. And I'm not an expert in this area, but from what I have seen, it is really pretty impressive. And I believe a number of organizations within the AME have used this. Microair in Charlottesville, Virginia, has actually adopted this methodology or this approach.
Great, great. Can you display the house again? Then indicate the top 2 or 3, assuming that they are all important.
Boy, that's a really difficult one because they all are important. But before I attempt to answer that question, I'd like to describe how these ended up in this house. So the People-Centric Leadership Summits that I described that brought together 23 presidents and CEOs, first we asked them to vividly describe what people-centric leadership looked like inside the organization. And this is what really birthed this description of what the culture looked and felt like, specific behaviors and outcomes. And what I mean by outcomes is there's a line out the door and no turnover. People come in, thank God it's Monday instead of thank God it's Friday. And what we did is we affinity diagrammed and we needed to prioritize. So even though these made it on, they're not the end-all be-all, these are the ones that they felt were the absolute must-haves. So you're pressuring me to pick 2 or 3. So what I would say is, unless you already have a vision that's clearly defined for the culture beyond just words, I mean, Enron had core values and look where that ended up, but really a description of what the culture looks like, the policies, the behaviors. I would pick that as number 1. And next would be goals and alignment. And a lot of folks will say, oh, we already have goals. But really, goals that are aligned so that team members can actually see how what they do matters and has meaning and purpose. And then, of course, we really hit home with this is listening is just so incredibly powerful, misunderstood and not used. If you let me pick a 4th, I'd have to say the way you go to GEMBA, because it's so misunderstood and it's actually sometimes can do more damage than good, and it really and truly encapsulates every other one in the house. Thanks.
Okay. All right. The next one is, could you elaborate more on the statement, who am I becoming versus what we are going to do?
Okay, that was on the slide on reflection and self-assessment, and it was a quote by Captain Michael Abershoff, and it says, management has a lot to do with questions, but leadership is a function of questions. And the first question for a leader always is, who do we intend to be, not what we are going to do. Who do we intend to be? So in the book, Captain Abershoff is describing the changing of command of the Benfold in which he's taking over. And the crew began cheering as the departing captain turned over his command to Captain Abershoff. And it was at this time that Abershoff realizes that this is not the departure that he desired when it was time for him to turn over his command. And actually, at his departure, there was not a dry eye in the crowd. The new movie, Steve Jobs, is actually another great example of this. Steve Jobs was amazing. He accomplished some really amazing things in his life. But honestly, in this movie, he's depicted as a real jerk. And I asked myself, I wonder if he could see this depiction of his life, how proud would he really be? So who do you want to be is centered around your core values. How do you want to act and behave in reaching your accomplishments? So not to answer the question with another quote, but I think that the Maya Angelou quote really sums it up. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Okay. That's a great quote there. The next one is, what is the criteria for an employee engagement survey?
So Lisa, I'll take that one. There's not a specific criteria. There's several examples, and the federal government has one. It's EVS, Employee Viewpoint Survey. The one that we are really fond of is the Gallup Q12, which we can send you a link, right, Jerry? And or a modified Q12. But the thing that's important here is the questions in both are fairly similar, and they're surrounded around how teams feel about the support that they get from leadership. So the questions are things like, I know what's expected of me. I have materials and equipment I need to do my job. I have the opportunity to do what I do best. I've received recognition or praise. So all these things are starting to sound like the House of People-Centric Leadership. Another question around, I have somebody that cares about me as a person. I have somebody who encourages my development. My opinion seems to count. My company makes me feel my job is important. I have a best friend at work, right, which speaks to I'm cared for. Let's see, what are some other questions? I have the opportunity at work to learn and grow. So again, it's about development, it's about meaning and purpose, and it's about being supported. So again, we can send that out to you, but that would be our recommendation.
Okay, great, thanks. The next one is, it is a common lean thought to focus on process, not people. Keeping in mind of the 20% of the workforce that is actively disengaged, is it more appropriate to make smart yet timely organizational choices for the folks that cannot be reached with varying stimuli?
Boy, it's a sad common lean thought. I guess I never looked at it as lean is focused on process over people. And the whole point of this is an equal weight or balance on the process and people. But if the question really is, what do you do with the 20% who are actively disengaged, is focus on the top that are engaged and the middle so that they'll actually pull up the bottom, or the 20% will self-select out.
Okay.
Is there anything to add?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Great. Next one is the visioning broken down as in Hoshin into bite-sized pieces, or is the vision a bold statement that encompasses how we want to work and operate?
The vision is typically a bold statement that encompasses how we want to work and operate, and it has supporting detail regarding the aspirational leadership behaviors. It describes what we want our culture to look like, and these behaviors are based on the things that we value or what we aspire to. And then these behaviors define how we want to operate and how we want to make leadership decisions. This vision and leadership behaviors become the filter or lens we use to make most business decisions. And since your business is people, having that filter or lens allows you to make business decisions keeping focus on all the people involved. At the Barry Way Miller organization, their vision is we measure the success in the way we touch the lives of people. They've also defined their leadership behaviors in their guiding principles of leadership, which can be found on their website, and we can actually provide you a link to that as well.
Great. And the next one is, will you elaborate on ideas for recognizing employees without rewards?
Okay, we really hit a nerve there. Again, we're talking about tangible rewards. Remember, a tangible reward is when you give somebody something because they accomplished something that you wanted them to do. So if you do this, you will get this. And a reward can be both explicit and also implied by precedent. So people are not motivated by rewards for tasks that require even a minimal amount of cognitive skill. And according to psychologists and psychiatrists, rewards are a means of control or manipulation, and people don't respond to that. When we want to recognize people, our goal is to make people feel valued for who they are and their contributions to the mission or purpose of the organization. And the best way to recognize people is to appreciate their efforts frequently and often. And there are different ways in which we can communicate this appreciation. And each person, every individual, responds differently to the different forms of communication. The key is to understand what means of communication a specific individual responds to. So some people respond to verbal affirmation by specifically telling them the behavior or effort that you observe, the impact it had on you or the organization, and the way that it made you or the team feel. Recognition should be done frequently, one-on-one. It's also a good idea to open meetings, giving the opportunity for team members to recognize each other. And the same can be done for larger groups, such as quarterly updates, and this is often referred to as shout-out. So another way to communicate your appreciation is by giving them time, giving people your time and attention for listening to them and their ideas, by coaching and mentoring them with a new skill. It also is about allowing or giving them their own time. So maybe giving them time to explore, investigate, or experiment with one of their ideas, or maybe even to go coach the local athletes or sports team. So another great example of time, one of the organizations that I worked for, the team had been working really, really long hours, 12-hour days and weekends. And one of the members on the team was a new father. He had a new baby at home, a month, 2 months. And so one of the days, after a really long day, particularly hard day, at the end of the day, the supervisor comes up to the gentleman and says, why don't you take off like an hour early to go spend some time with your family and your new baby. That's an expression of appreciation or recognition. I appreciate everything you did. Why don't you leave early and I'll cover for you and I'll help out. And that sends a real strong message not only to the person who is receiving that recognition, but to every member on the team who witnesses and experiences that action. So another way to express appreciation is by consciously and deliberately doing things for people to make their life or job easier. For example, fixing a glitch they have on their computer, giving a resource or tool that they need. A great example for me the other day, my team member, my car had broken down, and my team member said, "Hey, I'm in the area. I can actually pick you up at your house or follow you over with a car. We can get it fixed and I'll bring you back home." So they were willing to help me out. They were giving to me. They recognized me and how valuable that I am to the organization. So that's another way to express appreciation. So for more on this, I'd actually recommend the 5 Languages of Appreciation by Gary Chapman and Paul White. I'm not an expert on this topic, but it's pretty powerful stuff. So on another note, we all think and we all believe, hey, money's a motivator, right? We all like money. And it is a motivator, but not as you might think. The reality is, and studies have shown, if you don't pay people enough, people will not be motivated. So the best thing to do is to pay people enough so they don't think about money, okay? And also, like bonuses, what about bonuses? And bonuses can be a form of celebration if they're not tied to specific expectations or performance. So, for example, if a company has a windfall and makes more than anticipated, equitably spreading the wealth sends a strong message that we are all in this together. At Berryway Miller, they place great value on recognition and celebration, but they do not believe in rewards as well. And most of the recognition and celebration activities are peer-based, and many times they include team members' families. So, again, about the whole concept of rewards and recognition, and the truth about what motivates us, I'd recommend the book by Dan Pink, Drive: The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, and some of his online videos.
Great information there. And looks like the last question is, how do you align the vision of multiple employees while still making sure to have inclusion?
So it's critically important to get input from across the organization when putting together the cultural vision statement and the supporting leadership behaviors as we talked about. So typically a cross-functional team is assembled to pull the vision and leadership behaviors together. The team can be as small as 15 to as large as 50, depending on the size of the company. And pre-work is assigned to this team to align their mindset with the event and define expectations, so people come in prepared. So prior to putting this team together or this visioning event, some form of communication should go out to the entire organization, soliciting input on the leadership behaviors that are wanted and needed in the organization. So giving everybody the opportunity to have a voice. In addition, conducting focus groups or listening sessions should be assembled to get a deeper understanding of some of the input that you got from maybe the email or written communication. So data from the email and listening session becomes the input for driving the creation of the vision statement and detailed leadership behaviors. Once the visioning team comes to consensus and crafts the initial version of the vision statement and detailed leadership behaviors, a draft should then be presented to the entire organization or an appropriate cross-functional representation of the organization, again, soliciting their feedback and input. Then this feedback and input should be taken into account to finalize the document. And depending on the extent of the changes, there might be additional drafts that need to be presented to the organization, because this is really important to get buy-in from everyone, and everybody needs to feel like they have a voice. So based on the multiple touch points for feedback, once the visioning team is satisfied that the document is an accurate depiction of what the organizational culture aspires to be, the document is then finalized and the whole team signs the document. After the event and finalization of the vision, the senior leadership team presents the vision to the organization using their own words and shares what the vision means to them and relates its importance on how the business will use it and how the organization moves forward.
Great. And thank you, everyone, for all your questions. And thank you, Lisa and Maria Elena, for a very insightful presentation. This brings our webinar to a close. Our next scheduled webinar will be on Thursday, February 18th, titled Building the Fit Organization with Dan Markovitz. Please visit AME.org under the AME Events and Training tab for more information and to register. Please don't forget to fill out the short survey that will be in your inbox. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a productive day.